The VAT on education argument generally boils down to a group of people saying shut up and pay your taxes and a group of people saying we already do. And there's a real inability to listen to either side. There's a real inability to actually break through that class war. And that class war was very intentional. That was started by Bridget Phillips, and she wanted there to be a class war. She knew that if you actually got down to the nitty-gritty of it, there is no argument. So instead of getting to the nitty-gritty where there is no argument, it doesn't work, she would rather make people hate a sector of society who have chosen a different way for their education. And she would rather say that they're not paying their way, that they should pay more, that they are being subsidised by the state. You know, these are all blatant mistruths. Well, the facts don't lie. So all the facts are out there now. There are no new teachers. There is a massive groundswell of kids moving from the independent sector to the state sector. The state sector is not being properly funded. It is not being properly supported. They are making teachers redundant. There are more children moving into classrooms that don't have the teachers. There isn't the physical space. The schools are crumbling. Something that keeps popping up on my feed is the knowledge of asbestos in schools. The amount of schools that have got asbestos in them, that Labour have this report, they are well aware of it, but they're doing nothing about it. So we've got a lot going on about education at the minute, but more today, what we're looking at is the impact of the education fiasco on the wider economy. So that is effectively, whilst we're struggling to help pensioners pay for their winter fuel, and whilst we are chucking all of our money into migrants and not being able to pay for disabled benefits, we are also paying for a group of kids to have a breakfast club before school that they don't need. Now, I've never said, would never say, will never say, have never said, it's not a thing to say that children that need feeding shouldn't be fed. Never, ever have I said that. And if one person comments that underneath, that's misinformation. Categorically, I have never, ever said that you shouldn't help support and feed children in need. You should. I actually advocate for more. I think there should be more done to help children whose parents can't meet those financial costs. But we cannot hide behind the fact that 80% of children in the state system don't need any financial assistance in their schooling. They do not need free breakfasts. It's just not a thing. By their own words of admission, the children saying they're going in for a second breakfast. We don't need it. So £450 per family being saved each year is actually costing the taxpayer £450, which they don't need to spend. Now, then you get on to the moral point of this. So we're talking about children, remember, little people, those that can't advocate for themselves and need us to advocate for them. Those children, we were told in the independent sector, 3,000 children would be displaced and moved to state school. We've already had 13,000. In Wales alone, the figures are looking to be 6,500 children from the closure of a projected 19 independent schools. I've lost count with how many have closed in the UK, in England. But the overall figure is appalling. So when Bridget Phillipson said 3,000 might leave in a year, we're now looking at the government's own figures of a projected 54,000 in 2 years. Now that means it will make no money. But what it will do is cost money, because who do you think is now paying for those children that were in independent? So let's just clear this one up. If the children were in independent school, their parents were still paying their portion of taxes to go to education. So they were effectively paying for a place in state education that they weren't using, whilst funding their child's education in the independent sector that they were using. Now that child has come out of the independent sector and has gone into the state sector. But there is no funding for them in the state sector because the money that the parents were paying was already being used by another child. So there is no funding. So now we've got to find the funding for these children, 54,000 of them, we've got to fund through state education. But we don't have it for the children that we've already got in state education. That money isn't even fulfilling their needs. So how is it going to fulfil the needs of 54,000 children? We were told that VAT on education would raise money to hire 6,500 new teachers. We are laying teachers off at an unprecedented level. Never before have more teachers had their contracts ended or not renewed than now. And that is because there is a ginormous gap in the budget. So not only are we not getting 6,500 new teachers, we're losing 13,000. And this is all as a direct result of Bridget Phillipson being made Education Secretary in July and hatching up a plan with Rachel Reeves that they hadn't thought through based on their own ideological spite. This never had legs. So for those people that want to turn around and say, pay your taxes, just shut up and stop moaning, carrying on paying for it, well, you can see that 54,000 are not, cannot. So it doesn't matter whether you tell them to shut up and pay, they're not shutting up or paying. They're moving their kids into the state sector. They don't care. You can call them what you like. You can throw as many names at them as you want to. It makes no difference. They're moving with their feet into the state sector and the state sector can't cope. Now you tell me whose bright idea that was. Well, we know it was Bridget and Rachel's. You tell me that you think that is a sensible idea. Somebody somewhere turn around and say it's a really good idea to kill a sector that was educating at no cost to the state, that was educating 600,000 children. In fact, it was adding £328 million to the economy, and it was not costing the state a penny. And now that sector is imploding because despite Bridget's, I don't accept that, broad shoulders, they can't cope. They cannot afford 20% VAT and a hike in national insurance. Those two idiots cooked up a plan that was destined to fail. Now, the question is, are they going to admit that and tell you that they knew it was destined to fail, but they didn't care anyway because it wasn't really about money, it was about punishing people who wanted to do something different for their children? And if they do admit that, what are you going to think? If you have been one of those people that said, shut up and pay your taxes, what do you think then? When they punish you for wanting to do something different. It might not be anything to do with education. You just might want to live your life slightly differently. You think if they're prepared to do it with kids, they're not going to do it with you. If they're prepared to use kids as lab rats in their ideological experiment, and Keir Starmer says we don't do experimenting on people, turns out you absolutely do. And if they're prepared to do it on kids and they were prepared to do it on pensioners, you honestly think that anyone else is going to remain unscathed? You're smoking something. They show no moral integrity. They have no moral integrity. They will target any sector of society. Look at what they're doing with national insurance on hospices. So people who have end-of-life care, the hospices that provide that can't make the gap between the new national insurance hike and what they're already paying. They're going bust. Hospices, pensioners, children, farmers, fishermen, disabled. Honest to God, what's next? The dogs. They will get you any which way and how. So I would rethink all of these arguments. I would massively rethink these shut up and pay your taxes, because they'll be coming for you next. They will come for anyone that they can, and they simply don't care.